Hi, everybody. Hi, Gabby. Hi, Danielle. So excited for tonight. I loved that question that Anna asked about your mantra. Um, I guess Sakara in itself is a little bit of a mantra. It's a Sanskrit word. It means with form or giving form to things that don't have form yet, like your thoughts and dreams, ideas, your hopes, your goals. How do you take all those things that are kind of floating around out there in the ether and turn them into something in this world, in the physical realm, something that you can touch and feel and share with others? This idea of transforming your thoughts into things and your dreams into a reality. Yeah, how do you create? That's what the Sakara life is, right? Is the life that you envision yourself manifested into reality. And for us, we start with food as the foundation because we believe that food is information. It affects every part of your body and your life. If you don't feel good in your body, if you don't have your health, how can you show up as your best in your life? If you don't have the energy to show up to play with your kids or to go to work or to show up for your partner, you're not going to be your best self. If you don't have that brain clarity, if your hormones aren't balanced and you're not feeling like yourself, you're not going to show up as your best. And it really does start with the food. But beyond that, we know that your thoughts are really, really influential. What you think and the stories that you tell yourself can affect who you are. It can affect your physical body, and it can affect what you manifest into the life ahead. And so excited to be talking to Gabby Bernstein tonight. She is a longtime dear friend. We've had her on the podcast a couple times already, but she is so amazing. We had to bring her back for you all. Just an incredibly inspiring speaker. I feel like if you are in a place where you're feeling stuck, if you're craving change, if you're wanting something to happen and it's just not happening yet, you gotta listen to Gabby. Pull out one of her 9 books that she has written. You can listen to them on tape, on Audible, or pull out one of those books and actually read them, but dive in or listen to her podcasts because she has so many tools. And so tonight, we're actually going to be talking about her 10th book that's coming out later this year. You get it, girl? And learning about some of her newest teachings. So we're very grateful to have Gabby Bernstein with us here this evening. As I mentioned, Gabby is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, international speaker, a meditation guide, an entrepreneur, mentor, and overall guru to millions of people all around the world. We're so fortunate to have met Gabby in our very, very early days of Sakara. I mean, we're like day 2 making food and Gabby got to try it. And we were starstruck feeding one of our first celebrities, Gabby Bernstein. Her new book, which is titled Self-Help, This Is Your Chance to Change Your Life, comes out in December, and we are excited to get a preview into those latest teachings tonight. So please join us in welcoming Gabby Bernstein.
Yay! It's so a vibe. You guys set a vibe here on Zoom. Like your brand is so strong. It comes through the Zoom.
You feel it?
I felt that vibe. It was like music in the beginning. It was so beautiful. I just centered in. I'm happy.
We're vibing. Well, we're excited to have you back. You know that we always like to start with the same question, which is, what is your mission here on Earth? Has it changed at all since we've talked to you, or is it still the same?
I don't think it's probably changed, but I would say that my mission is to crack people open to the healing sources inside of themselves and to a spiritual connection of their own understanding so that they can be their own inner healer.
And what brought you to this mission? You have such a powerful story. What brought you to this work?
Oh, myself, Danielle. The things that we teach, we often have taught ourselves first. And that is my experience.
So true.
I've really, and as you guys, that's your origin story as well. I've lived to tell what it means to live with ease, to trust my inner guidance system, to have a spiritual faith that is unshakable. And it has been my life's purpose to fulfill that for myself. I actually did this reading with someone recently, and they were like, wow, I've never seen someone who's had the courage to go through this many dark nights of the soul. And it was clear to me that I was like, yeah, it's interesting to have that reflected back to me, because it really is true. I've had a lot of beautiful opportunities to crack open to deeper and deeper awareness inside and a deeper and deeper path of healing. And it hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. And I've done it for myself first, and then along the way have shared the story and carried the message.
I mean, thank you, first of all,
Mhm.
for like being willing to go into those steps, into the dark night of the soul. I think it's really easy to avoid those places within ourselves,
Mhm.
but then we don't grow through them, right? Those things are going to keep showing up in our lives if we don't evolve past them.
Yeah, I
Right.
always say if we don't show up for what's up, it will keep showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Telling ourselves the same story on repeat. I think about this with my mom, because as much as, on this podcast, I feel like I don't usually put her in the nicest light, because it's so easy to talk about, the parts that were hard. She was a single mom and really sick. But I, as an adult and as I get older, I can appreciate the fact that I got to be a witness to that,
Mm.
because I watched her tell the same story over and over, even to this day. She's in
Yeah.
her 70s and she's telling the same story. I'm 38. She's telling the same story for at least 38 years. Definitely longer. And so I think about that as, my motto that, Anna Asper was like, every day I'm given endless blessings. And so I think about even the things that sometimes I can think about my childhood and what was hard, even though it was a blessed childhood in many ways. It's like, even those were blessings. They taught me so much. And I know in your book that's coming out in December, Self-Help, you talk a lot about internal family systems and the dynamics and how that represents self. So I guess first I'm curious, why did you call it self-help? Because I feel like it's almost like this homage to like the early 2000s or something, and then we went through this weird phase where nobody wanted to talk about self-help because it was kind of bad. And now it's like, are you bringing it back? Because it needs to be brought back.
It's so back. It's so back. So there's actually a deeper meaning for the title, and then I can also share sort of the value of the title. So the therapy that changed my life is a therapy called internal family systems therapy, and it's not about your outside family. It's about an inner family of little parts of ourselves that are inside of us. So the triggered aspects of us, or the addictive aspects of us. And if you've ever said to yourself, a part of me gets outraged when my husband does XYZ, or a part of me loses my shit at work, or whatever it might be. These are different, almost like little personalities inside of us, because they're protection mechanisms that we've had for most of our life, from the difficult traumatic moments from our childhood that we couldn't process. We've built up these protection mechanisms. And so the thesis of IFS is to really help these younger parts of yourself come to a place of ease and peace and a sense of safety. And so imagine you had almost like an internal parent inside that could help bring conscious awareness to these young aspects of yourself, right? So the process of bringing that internal parent to these parts is bringing what in IFS is called self. And so while we have these activated little children inside, we also have self. And self is our adult, resourced, undamaged part of who we are. It's the God within us. It's the source within us. It's the part of us that shows up when our child is crying. if any of your children come to you, or if my son comes to me and he's struggling, the first thing he's met with is connection and compassion and calmness and clarity when I'm in my adult resourced self. And that is an aspect and a truth nature of who we are. That is self with a capital S. And so the whole book is about letting self, your adult resourced self, help these young parts of you. And so it's pretty radical. It is based on the principles of internal family systems therapy, but it's my own self-help practice. So it's IFS informed is probably the best way to say it. And I'm trained in IFS. I'm not a therapist, but I did do the level 1 and level 2 training. I think I was actually the last person to really be able to get trained that wasn't a therapist. So I've had this huge, I know that was God's work.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, like, how did you get into this? Because it's something that I haven't heard of before. I feel like I hear about a lot of different things, but this one is not one that I've heard of. What drew you to it?
It's very in the zeitgeist right now. So you're going to be hearing about it a lot. I think particularly you'll be seeing Dr. Richard Schwartz, who's one of my dear friends and my mentor in IFS. He's the founder of IFS. You'll see him on a lot of podcasts, and he's out there. So IFS was the therapy that my therapist was using with me for 7 years together. And I didn't know what it was. But one afternoon I was watching this YouTube video and I was like listening to this man, Dr. Richard Schwartz, having a conversation about this therapy that he invented called IFS. And he's talking about similar to what I was just sharing with you, these different parts of us. My cats are going to go crazy here. And these different parts of us and how we have these children inside and the way that we also have self that can speak to us. And I was like, wait a second. I literally leapt out of my chair. That's the therapy that I've been doing for almost a decade with my therapist. It was just this beautiful aha moment. And it took all this work that we'd been doing, it just sort of brought it all into this one beautiful package because now I understood what we were doing. And I reached out to Dick and his team right away. It was right when this was in 2020 when I was starting my first podcast. And he was the third episode I ever did. I had Dick Schwartz on. And I was like, I got to get to know this guy. I want to learn everything. And I had this intuitive hit, as I always do, that this was the next level of my teaching, but also diving deeper into it was the next level of my own healing. So I said to him, I want to teach about this. I want to write about this. I'm writing about it in Happy Days, my last book. And he said, great. He's like, I really think you should do the training. And so I went ahead and I applied for the level 1 and 2 training and I put my hours in, and I'm a practitioner, an IFS practitioner. Again, not a licensed therapist, but I have the model in me. So much so that I had the confidence and the courage to go write a self-help book based on these principles. And again, it's my own self-help method. It's called the 4-step check-in method, which I'll teach you guys today. But it's based on the principles of IFS. And these are the principles that changed my life. And I'm so grateful to have Dick Schwartz's blessing to go out and to democratize his work and to carry his message outside of the therapist's office and into everyday life, because that is what I do best. I'm a translator and I'm a demystifier and I make things simple for people. So that's what I'm here to do with this book.
It's so interesting because in theory, I've heard about it before, but I've never, my therapist, I don't think is trained in it, or I don't think she's using it on me, but maybe she is. But it's so interesting because I love how it kind of dissects your experience and kind of makes you the sky instead of the clouds, where when you're in a moment of, like your example was you get upset with your husband or whatever it is, it can feel like you, can feel like self. Right. It can feel like it is you. But what I understand you to be saying is that it's not, it's like, that metaphor that goes around in like parenting where when a kid comes home from school and is feeling anxious about something or whatever the feeling is, you say, you have a table like of people and feelings in your brain, and you're at the head when you're calm and resourced. And then it sounds like anxiety, who's sitting over here, is the loudest voice. How can you learn from that anxiety and then make sure you at the head of the table are the loudest voice again? So it reminds me of that a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'll break it down for you. Okay. So I think that you guys are really exciting listeners right now because you're into this. And that's actually the second reason, Whitney, why I called it self-help, just to answer that question finally, is because I really believe that this is a book that the subtitle is, "This is your chance to change your life." I know that this book will change lives, but it's only going to change the lives of the willing.
Mm.
And so to put that title front and center and say, this is called self-help. Are you ready to raise your hand? And are you ready to do the work? If you're not going to pick up that book. So I've weeded out all the folks who are just like, I'm a hell no for that. And I've welcomed the party that is the Sakara community, that is the wellness community, that is people that are actually raising their hands saying, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. And so I'm going to break it down simply for you. Okay. So we have these experiences from our childhood that are often traumatizing, could be big T trauma, little T trauma. Danielle, you were talking about your mom. And if you had an attachment figure that wasn't safe, that's a big T trauma, right? And for me, it was abuse as a child that I was so extreme for me that I dissociated from it for 30 years. And all of us have our own trauma stories, whether they're big or small. Small could be like a teacher telling you you're stupid, but it could have a huge impact on your life. It could really impact you. And so what happens when we have these moments is we exile them and we say, I don't want to ever have to feel that again. And I'm going to put that away and I'm going to shut it down. And we build up a lot of protection mechanisms as little children. And we all have little people, right? We have 5, 6-year-olds. These little people, you can see them. They build up these bosses inside of them, or they build up my son, like, if I'm not the boss, I don't belong, right? Or they build up their, the woe is me, and they need to be the victim in the situations. Whatever these little personalities that they take on are actually protection mechanisms. And we all did it just like our children are. And if we don't have the adult caregiver with us that's healthy, that's safe, that's soothing, that's curious and connected and compassionate, then we're going to build out big time protectors. And so I'll use myself for an example. I build out the protector control. If I'm not in control, I'm not safe. That control protector went on to become so extreme in my life that I was constantly anxious. And that was another protector. And then when the anxiety and the control didn't work anymore, I turned to cocaine to keep that control even more. That's like an extreme protector, right? And so I just built up all these different addictions and patterns and really extreme behaviors, all known as protector parts, to anesthetize the wound from my childhood, or wounds, all of the exiled parts of me. And so when we have these extreme little children running our lives, we show up to our office, right? We show up as bosses, and sometimes our 10-year-old can be on the Zoom and we can be a real asshole. Or we show up into our marriage and our relationship, and sometimes our little protector part is so activated that our extreme managers, all these protection mechanisms start to act out, right? So we become rageful. I have a protector with that shows up in my marriage, and I call her Knives Out. Knives Out has knives. Like, she will literally slit your throat. So we have these extreme parts of us. And the thing is that they're working really hard. These extreme behaviors, if you were to look at your addiction, or look at your rage, or look at the way you act out at work or with your husband, and instead of judging yourself, if you said to yourself, actually, this is a part of me that's working really hard to protect against a deeper feeling that I don't want to feel. That is a first step right there. Mm. So throughout the book, I give you a 4-step process of checking in with these parts of you. So instead of checking out and becoming so blended with that part, just like Danielle said before, getting to the place where you believe this is who I am an addict, or I am an asshole, or I am a workaholic, or I am a control freak, you can recognize that if you choose to check in with the part and offer it curiosity and compassionate connection, you're bringing self to it. You're bringing the internal parent to it. And you have the power to help that part of you calm down and relax. And then the more you do that, and the more you rinse and repeat, the more settled that part becomes, because it trusts that it has a resourced adult self inside. It's a lot. Are you tracking?
Yeah, it's a lot. And I think it's also just so important to, when I think about self-help, it can be so many different things. And it can often feel like the need to fix, but this sounds like the need to nurture, the need to become
Yes.
passionate. And that is a lot more appealing than, I think wellness, especially these days, kind of is the new self-help and can easily for people feel like a to-do list instead of, when we talk about every time you sit down to eat as an opportunity to nourish and take care of yourself. It's not that there's a list of foods you can't eat or you should eat, or there's bad foods and good foods. It's just like asking, is this nourishing me? Instead of the stress of what I think it has become of like, is this the perfect meal? Or,
That's right.
And
That's
so
right.
offering that compassion. You said a couple times, you mentioned the resourced self. Like, I can imagine what that means, but when you define it, what does it mean? And is that, it sounds like a necessary component to parent those smaller children in each of us.
Beautiful. So self is self with a capital S. It's an energy. It's a presence that's within us. It's the truth of who we are. It's our essence. It's, like I said earlier, the God within us, or you might call it your Buddha nature, or all different kinds of spiritual phrases could be even referencing this self energy. And self energy has 8 C qualities. And the 8 C's are calmness and compassion, creativity, connection, courage. There's, I always will forget some as I carry on. Clarity is another one. And there's 2 more that I'm going to keep forgetting. It always, like, you start.
We'll just have to read your book to get all of them.
They're all in my brain. And connectedness. And when we have these C qualities activated inside of us, these C qualities of self actually have the power to help calm our nervous system, AKA calm down these parts of us, right? So let me give you an example. I was really activated yesterday about something that was a young thing, okay? And my husband gave me this gorgeous gift for our anniversary. These beautiful earrings, like epic. Like any woman would be like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. My husband's incredible. And I have a younger part that was a little girl who grew up with a lot of scarcity and a huge lack mentality in my home. And that was obviously traumatizing as a child to feel like I don't have enough, or we're not going to have enough, or all those feelings. And so whenever my parents would give me gifts as a child, I would really be like freaking out, because if I didn't like it, I would have I'd be so upset to the point of just shame and blame and sadness, because 1, I knew that they gave it to me, but they couldn't afford it. And 2, I didn't even like it. So if I'm given a gift that isn't like a slam dunk, I go into that child part. And so I kept trying on the earrings, and they weren't really the right color. And I don't really wear this style earring. And I was just sort of like, these are stunning, but I kept going back and forth about the earrings. And I was so upset, and I had to separate myself from it. So I left and I went for a drive, and I did my 4-step check-in process. And so I checked in with myself. And this sounds stupid, but it's actually huge, right? Like, this is a little part of me that's like losing her shit, but it's just because of this younger experience. And so I checked in, and I gave some curiosity. The first step is to choose to check in. So I got in the car and chose to check in instead of stay checked out. I went and I turned my attention inward, and I started to get curious, which is the second step. And I started to notice all the feelings and the sensations that were inside of me that were really activated. And I started feeling the rage and the sadness and the shame for not liking it, and the fear of telling him the truth, and all of that. And the feelings, the somatic experience inside. And then the third step is to compassionately connect with the part by asking that part of me, what do you need? And so I asked the part, what do you need? And I heard, I need to tell him that I want something different. And, and then I checked for those C qualities, which is the 4 steps. Check to see if there's self energy inside of you. Check for the C qualities. And I noticed I felt calmer. So there was self. I felt more connected to my part. There is self. I felt compassion for myself. There is self. I felt clarity. I actually want something different, Zach. It's okay to say that, because I know that what you want is for me to wear these and enjoy them. And I felt the courage to speak up and tell him. And so that all happened just with a 4-step check-in process. Yeah, I was able to untangle myself from that blendedness with that part of me. I was able to tend to it, listen to it, offer it the energy and connection and compassion it needed. That's all self-like qualities. And then I was able to experience self emerge at the end with the sensations of clarity and compassion and connection and calmness. This is no fucking joke. It's a miracle. And I do this all day long.
This is really powerful because it's something that I think about, all the time of how do you separate yourself from your ego self, that self that's trying to protect you or tell you you're not good enough or you shouldn't be doing that or whatever it is, and be in your authentic self, like just your pure, true self. And it's really, really hard. I mean, the courage piece, I think, is a really big piece for me where I can stop, I can recognize, I can have that moment of clarity and being like, okay, this is why I'm feeling this way or what I need. But then the courage piece to then take action and make it different, I think is a place where I get stuck. Like, how do you then have the courage to speak up and be like, I don't like this, let's get something else? Or
the courage is a quality of self, and self is in you. It's like there's a beautiful metaphor that a IFS teacher uses, that self is like the sun behind the clouds. When the clouds are in front of the sun, but it's always there behind them. And so when you do that 4-step inquiry that I shared, different C qualities will emerge, right? So you might feel calmer. That's enough. You might feel a creative energy come forward, and that's enough. You might feel more compassion towards yourself. That's enough. And courage is a hard one. So the more you practice this, the courage to change, the courage to take an action may not come instantly. It may come, and it's a spontaneous experience of self that comes through when you get into the habit and the ritual of tending to these younger parts of yourself. So I actually wouldn't.
Right. Like maybe I didn't dive deep enough into that piece
That's what I was
and untangle it in order to release it, to have the courage.
Well, no one has. This is deep work. This is the work. This is why I put on the cover of the book, this is your chance to change your life, because these are young, extreme, ingrained neural pathways. They're personalities. They're little children, right? Little children, what do they need before they can actually have the courage to speak up? They need to be seen. They need to feel connected to. They need compassion. They need some clarity and calmness. And then they might have the courage to speak up. But they need a lot of connection first. And so we got to look at these extreme parts of us as little people. They're like my 5-year-old son inside of me. And it's no different because we never grew up. We never changed. We've had these patterns ingrained from such a young age, and we can be in our adult self walking around, and then all of a sudden be triggered and go into our 5-year-old crazy chaos. And we do a lot to try to push down those feelings and push down those behaviors. And, we will defend them or judge them or attack others to not have to feel the shame of these behaviors. But truly, they just need our attention. And what Danielle said was so beautiful is that we don't have to fix anything. There's nothing to fix. We just have to find out who's inside. Mm-hmm. Find out who's inside with curiosity and connection. And those steps take you there.
I have a couple things running through my head. One is when you're kind of tending to that younger side, that younger kid in us, whichever one it is at any given time, is it about understanding why that kid needs what it needs, or is it just giving it what it needs? Because I think a lot of psychotherapy can be what happened to you at 5. Let's really figure out what happened at 5, and kind of dredging up a lot and understanding. Is that part of
No,
this?
you don't need to understand anything. You let the part tell you, right? So let's say you're activated in a moment and you're like, I remember what Gabby told me. She shared this 4-step check-in. So I have enough awareness that I can walk away and check in with myself, right? So that's step 1, choose to check in. In the second step, when you become curious, you start offering that part of you questions, right? So you're like, how old are you? What do I know about you? Are there any thoughts or feelings or sensations that need to come forward that you want me to know about? And you give this part of you some space to speak up. And so you may know nothing. And remember, I didn't know that I was connecting to the part that was the little girl that was triggered. When I got curious, I was like, what do I need to know? What do you want me to know? And I started hearing, she was like, I'm the little girl that didn't get the gifts she wanted and she's freaking out. And she's freaking out because somebody spent money on something she doesn't want and they didn't have the money. And so she revealed herself to me. You might go into it knowing who you're talking to and you might not. You might just know that there's a feeling or a sensation. Like anxiety is a protector. You could check in with your anxiety, or even patterns like binging is a protector. So you could check in with the binging part, or addiction is a protector. Now, some of the more extreme protectors like addictive patterns, I do believe that need more therapeutic support. And of course, those exiled parts of us, those really traumatized little parts of us, those need therapeutic support. But I'm here to give you a practice that can create ease inside your system, in your internal system, and with a lot of the parts that are with you day to day.
And do you think, I'm not exactly sure what this question is, so bear with me, but in your example, one, because it's not me, it's easy to like understand and have some clarity about what you're talking about. But it's also, what about an example where, like you're fighting with your husband and it's not, I guess when it's like two sides, they're in their 5-year-old, you're in your 7-year-old, whatever it is, like how do you, I guess, find that compassion for self and is other, I guess, part of the work too, to like see the them.
Eventually. So I'm living the miracle right now of being able to stay in my resourced self when my husband does the thing that typically would trigger me. I've done it 3 times now. Three total, exactly. But it's profound. And so the more, really you have to practice these methods on yourself first. So the more you master it for yourself, the more awareness you have inside, the more you know that you have a place to turn inward. The more likely experience early on, Danielle, is that you'll be activated and maybe you'll have enough self-awareness that you could say, you know what, I have clarity that I have to step away right now and do the check-in method. Or 3 hours later you do it and then you come back to center. So it doesn't matter about when or how, it's that you turn inward at some point. And so as a result of doing this now for a long time in my therapy and then obviously writing a book about it, I'm now in a place where that is actually becoming something that's a real opportunity in the moment, in the fight, that is not necessarily going to happen right away. But you will start to have a lot of more compassion. The more you extend compassion to your young parts, the more awareness you have of the young parts of your partner and the people in your life. And so instead of being like, oh, you're just an asshole for treating me like that, you actually can really recognize, no, that's a young part of him that's super activated right now.
But then I guess I could just imagine where this gets to a place where, like you can have so much compassion that you're like putting up with something that maybe you shouldn't from a partner, or, how do you, I guess like in the midst of all that, how do you engage that conversation too?
Well, you're taking care of your parts first. And so in doing so, you may recognize, like right now, I'm not able to be in full body compassion of my husband in these moments, but I can say that the more compassionate thing I can do for myself, for my part, this young part of me, and for your young parts, is to just do a timeout and walk away, right? And say, let's take a break, or to not say anything for 10 minutes while he's talking, or to shake it out later, or, to say with my resourced self, I'm noticing that we're both activated. Let's take a break. So that's for me first. And then the more you develop that, the more you see the other in that way. But you're going to naturally, the more you do this, if you really commit to this practice, the more you do it, you will naturally and spontaneously start to see other people through in their parts. So maybe people that are less extreme in your life, like not a marriage, right? But maybe you have a friend who you see them like acting out, or you see them like physically shutting down, like physical responses, or people going into these protection mechanisms. Like you can shapeshift in a protector part, right? Like I see people like brace up when they get into their scared parts, right? So you might start to notice that a little bit. You might see like, oh, this coworker I work with always shuts down when I ask them to do something. And then, you start to get a little bit more information about that. That's a protector right there, And you just start to see it because it's impossible not to when you start to see it in yourself.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mhm.
This one. What kind of protector is disordered eating? I know that's something that you've talked about pretty extensively. You've had your Finally Full seminars and things. Like now
Finally
not
Full.
having, yeah, you remember those?
400 years ago. It's so good. I got to bring it back.
Yeah, but now with this information that you have and sitting from this place, like what kind of protector?
So much information. It's the same. So there's two styles of protectors. So and I didn't get so deep into this. I'm sort of keeping it baseline for you guys, but we'll go deeper. We have the exiled parts that we were trying to protect, and the protectors are managers or firefighters. And managers are like the control freak. Managers are the ones that are on a day-to-day basis with us. Maybe like a hypochondriac, or maybe not a hypochondriac. Maybe a manager is someone that's like shuts down when they feel called out, or a perfectionist, or just sort of the day-to-day behaviors that are just on alert at all times, ready to manage the big feelings that get activated, right? So for me, was the controller a big one. Then there's the firefighters. When the managers aren't working anymore, and we can't keep those feelings down. The firefighters, which are often the addicted parts, the really extreme parts, come in because they need to put out the fire of that impermissible feeling of that exile that they can't face. And so a firefighter is, for me, the cocaine addict, could be disordered eating. A firefighter is any form of addiction, suicidal ideation, just the very, very extreme, even dissociation as a firefighter. It's like the extreme parts that are there to shut it all down, to numb it all out. That's a firefighter protector. And you can tend to firefighters the same way that I'm suggesting, but I, like I said earlier, would probably bring those big extreme parts into the therapeutic process, although they will start to get some attention just by doing the self-help work, because the more you check in with these other parts of you, the closer you get to those extreme parts.
That's so interesting. It makes me think of like, is there a part of IFS that has any kind of ethos around like certain ages being particular moments in time where you create a firefighter or a manager, or is it more like the kind of trauma?
Young. If you ask your parts, how old are you? They'll give you very young ages. Or if you sometimes ask a part of you, how long have you been around? It will say forever. Or for as long as I can remember.
Wow.
These are young.
Does that make you want to parent any differently?
I was going to ask the exact same thing. Like, has this training changed the way you parent at all?
Oh yeah. And you'll never catch me saying to my son, it's okay, you're fine. You'll never catch me saying that. You'll see me saying to him, I first of all, I'm checking in with you. Do you give me permission? Like, do you want to check in? Right? Because sometimes little kids don't want to, the same way your parts don't want to, right? That's why that first step is choose to check in. So if he doesn't want to, I'll wait till nighttime, right? If I see him activated, I'll wait till right before bed when it all spills out. You guys know this. And whenever that moment is, I'll let him give me permission to check in. And then I'll be curious, oh, what did that feel like? Or what is that sensation in your body? Or what do you know about it? And let him just give me information. And then I'll just be in that compassionate seat of connection. And I'll ask him just exactly what I would ask these young parts. What do you need? How can I help you? Hey, do you want me to just listen? I'm here for you. And so I'm curious and I'm compassionate, I'm connected. And the reality is the more access I have to that self energy by doing this work on myself, the more access I have to that self energy with him. And so it's not necessarily about what you do or say, it's about the energy that you bring and that self presence of calm and connection and compassion and creativity and connectedness and courage. It's the energy that we have to bring to these little people. But yeah, this 4-step check-in will definitely be a book for kids one day too.
Yeah, I love that. What's the end goal? Is the end goal being able to very quickly recognize, oh, that's that child and kind of giving it what it needs? Or is it the end or like the hope? I don't know if there's an end goal. Who knows what end goal means, but
hope, yeah.
The hope like that you give that child so much of what it needed and didn't get that eventually it stops showing up in that way.
That's right. Yeah. So the hope and the reality, because I'm living it, is that the more you give your attention to these extreme parts, these young protectors, and the more you check in with them as often as possible and you give them that love and connection, the safer they feel inside because they feel seen. You have a sensation now of, you know what, I can actually help myself. I can help myself. Self can help me. Hence the title. I have self can help me. And so knowing that that's there and in accessing it and applying it helps these extreme parts become less extreme. And as they become less extreme and more calm, they can take on their natural roles. They can be more creative. They can be more, and the truth is that we don't want to get rid of these parts. There's no bad part of us. That's what Dick Schwartz says. There's no bad parts. They're just in extreme roles. So if we can help these parts of us feel less triggered, less activated, and feel more safe, ultimately what happens is that we allow them to become the best part of who they are. So my controller part, who wrote 10 books in 14 years, she did a lot of good work. We can say thank you to her. And now
Definitely.
She can do this new book tour and be on the road and be away every week and do it without losing her shit. She can do it without having a physical and mental breakdown. She can do it without expectation. She can do it with ease because she's not extreme anymore. That's the shift.
Amazing.
We lost Danielle.
We lost Danielle. I know she was having some technical difficulties today. She'll probably bounce back here in a couple of minutes, but I know we have a question from the community, and if anybody else has any other questions, feel free to write them in right now. Now's a great time to ask your questions. But we have one question which says, do you have any great messages for people 65 plus? So like people who are over 65, would you say that anything is different? Or
it's the same message I would give my 45-year-old self, which is it's never too late to heal inside. And if you want to, I've written many books about manifesting and attracting and spiritual connection. The greatest spiritual connection, the greatest super attractor power inside of us is the power to access that inner healer. Because when we know that we have access to that source of self inside, we don't have to be afraid anymore. We don't have to live from trigger to trigger. We don't have to live from one binge to the next addiction, to the next addiction, to the next boyfriend, to the next issue. We can become free inside. And so my message is that any age, this is possible. And 65 is young. I mean, I'm 45. I'm going to see I better see 65 as young. I'm getting close. So we have to just enjoy our life to the best of our ability. And the only way to do that is to make the commitment. The only way to truly enjoy your life, Whitney, I'm going to say this, I'm going to go on the record, is to do the deep inner work. Because the rest of it is kind of just a Band-Aid.
Yeah, right. I think that's a big part of our human experience. What we're here to do is to experience this work, right? And kind of untangle these parts of ourselves and heal these parts of ourselves that need healing deep within our souls. Like
Totally.
that perhaps we took on this body. people have all different beliefs, but we don't know why. But perhaps we took on this body to be in this exact life, to have these traumas so that we could experience them and live through them and grow through them, because we need whatever it is from this in order to heal this part of our soul.
I happen to 100% agree with that. That is my belief.
Well, another great question here that came through says, what if we do not remember our childhood with great detail?
Well, that was the same for me. And you can do this work because it's so safe to check in to the feelings or the sensations. You don't have to go back to the childhood. You don't have to go back to the specific wound. It may be revealed to you, or you may just be checking in with your anxiety in this moment. So if you have a lot of anxiety, or if you're a lot of fear, or you have a behavioral pattern that is creating chaos in your life, check in. And it doesn't have to give you information of a young age, although it probably will. But even if there's no memory, it can give you a sensation. It can give you a feeling. It can give you an image. So a lot of us who have had traumatized childhoods have dissociated memories and often don't remember much from their childhood, which is definitely my story. I'm not suggesting that this person had a traumatized childhood. Just who knows? We're all unique. Yeah. But we all have trauma, big T or small t, doesn't matter. We all got it. And the more extreme, sometimes the more often we don't remember. And so it's not about checking in with something that was so young, although that will happen. It could be just checking in with the experience you're having in this moment.
Yeah, I have done hypnotherapy twice, or maybe more than twice now, a few times. And that is really interesting. Because it basically puts you into a relaxed state, into a deep kind of like meditative state where you're awake but relaxed, and kind of allow your mind to go on this journey, and it's guided. And on one of mine, I got stuck. I don't know how I got there, but I got stuck in my piano teacher, like childhood piano teacher's home that I hadn't thought about, in 30 years. And so I wanted to continue on out of this room, and I couldn't get out of there. And so I say that to the hypnotherapist, like, I'm stuck in this room at my old piano teacher's home. And she was like, well, what are you there to do? And it was like, I was with my younger self, and like, I'll get emotional about this, but my younger self wanted me to watch her play because I had never let anybody watch me play or perform when I was growing up. And so, and a message that came through for me was about like, that I can be my own witness, and I can be my own cheerleader. I can be my own champion. And I feel like this process that you're talking about, like, builds that habit of allowing yourself this check-in without having to sit there and have a guided, hypnotherapist lead you through this. You can start to tune in. I didn't really have like that memory or anything there, but once I started just like asking, like you're talking about, getting curious, having that check-in, getting curious, it started to come up, and that memory came forward for me. And just these thoughts and the kind of like the why behind it came forward that I would have never, if you would have asked me like, what was it like taking piano lessons? And I've been like, it was fine. And, I don't really play the piano ever.
Yeah.
But like some piece of me, that little girl, was holding on to that. And and I needed to see it in order to understand.
She wanted to be seen by you, which is self. She wanted to be seen by your truth. And these little parts of us really just want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be respected. They want to feel compassionate. They want to feel connection. And they're just like little kids. And we would never treat our children or speak to our children the way we speak to ourselves. Never, ever, ever.
Yeah.
And so if we get into the practice of speaking to these younger parts of us inside with that kind of compassion and connection, everything can change.
Well, this has just been such an inspiring conversation, as always. I would love to end with light work, which is homework for our listeners. How can they start to put this into action? What is an exercise or challenge or practice that you'd like to give to them?
I would, if they're curious about this and they have some curiosity, a little bit of interest here, tonight, when they're complete here, I would go and just write down just 5 or 6 different protection mechanisms that you notice in your life. So you would probably call them maybe a protection mechanism or extreme patterns or behaviors, and just write them down. And then consider tonight that these are not bad habits or bad behaviors or bad parts of you. They're just protectors. They're trying to protect you from something. And if you can just for tonight witness them as protection mechanisms, as protector parts, that's a first step. It's a big first step.
I love that so much. Like not having any judgment on it, just put them there.
Just look at them and notice them and say thank you for your service. They've been working hard.
Absolutely. Well, Gabby, thank you for your service. Like, you have definitely been working hard, and we're so grateful that you do that work and for everything that you put out into the world. Thank you for being here for us tonight with all of our Sakara lights. We appreciate you. And it was so great to just get time with you and catch up a little bit. Also, sending you so much love, sister. And
I love you. I can't wait to spend time with you. I love you. So
love
good
you.
to be with you both.
Talk
Bye,
soon.
guys.
Have a great night. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again for the next in our talk series. Have a great night.